Oh. 8-inch drop off there.
Let's pray. Heavenly Father, I want to thank you for these public servants here right now who have chosen to serve. Thank you for their service. I ask that they would be joyful in their service because they have your wisdom. I ask that you give them wisdom to lead the community, wisdom as they make decisions that are important to all of us. I ask that they have courage to make decisions that are difficult at times. And I ask that you give them unity wherever possible. I also ask that they would have the support of this community, that they would feel supported. And Father, I ask that you would bless them with health and with peace. I know several of them have physical issues that they're dealing with. I ask that you would give them health, give them peace. Bless this meeting. We pray in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you, Pastor. With that, we'll call the meeting to order. Would ask that everyone please rise, and with the concurrence of the group here, I'm going to ask our young Marine to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
To the Constitution of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Rose, could you call the roll, please?
Councilmember Boger.
Here.
Councilmember Wagner.
Here.
Councilmember Greenlee.
Here.
Councilmember Lindsay.
Here.
Councilmember McDaniel.
Here.
Councilmember Shoemaker.
Here.
Councilmember Freeman.
Here.
Thank you, Rose. Are there any amendments to the agenda?
Thank you.
Okay, hearing no amendments, I do have, first two items are a pair of proclamations for this evening. First one for Breast Cancer Awareness Month for October 2014. Whereas while considerable progress has been made in the fight against breast cancer, it remains the most commonly diagnosed cancer and the second leading cause of death among women in the United States. And whereas each year it is estimated that more than 220,000 women in the United States will be diagnosed with breast cancer, and more than 40,000 will die as a result of the disease. And whereas October is Breast Cancer Awareness Month, an annual campaign to increase awareness about the disease. And whereas during this month we reaffirm our commitment to support breast cancer research and to educate all citizens about its risk factors, detection, and treatment. And whereas as we display pink ribbons and wear pink clothing to raise awareness, we also support those courageously fighting breast cancer and honor the lives lost to the disease. And whereas this October we recognize breast cancer survivors, those battling the disease, their families and friends who are a tireless source of love and encouragement, and applaud the efforts of our medical professionals and researchers working to find a cure for this deadly disease. And whereas Breast Cancer Awareness Month is an opportunity to unite all citizens in our community to prevent breast cancer deaths through increased education and regular screening. Now, therefore, I, Sean Gard, Mayor of the City of Washougal, Washington, do hereby proclaim October as Breast Cancer Awareness Month.
Can I say something?
Absolutely.
Great. As many of you know, I'm actually in the middle of my battle with this terrible disease as we speak. And I just wanted to take a moment and thank the mayor for this proclamation and reiterate all of the statements here. It's been a really rough summer. I have just finished my last chemo treatment. Yay. Thank you. And I have yet to go through my surgery, which will be at the end of this month. But I can tell you that the chemo did its job, and my tumor shrank considerably. My doctors are incredibly pleased, and so it should be very successful. And I'm very much looking forward for this to be done.
Yes, very good. It's great news. Thanks for sharing that.
Okay, our second proclamation is for Red Ribbon Week, October 26th to the 31st, 2014. Whereas alcohol and other drug abuse in this nation has reached epidemic proportions, and whereas the hope in winning the war on drugs lies in education and drug demand reduction, as shown by organizations such as the Lewis and Clark Young Marines of the Marine Corps League, to foster a healthy, drug-free lifestyle, and whereas government and community leaders are aware that citizen support is a most effective tool in the effort to reduce the use and abuse of drugs in our community, and whereas the red ribbon has been chosen to commemorate the work of Enrique Kiki Camarena, a special agent of the DEA who was killed in the line of duty and represents the belief that one person can make a difference, and whereas the Red Ribbon Campaign was established by Congress in 1988 to encourage a drug-free lifestyle, involvement in drug prevention, and efforts to reduce drug use and abuse, and whereas October 23rd to the 31st has been designated National Red Ribbon Week, which encourages Americans to wear a red ribbon during the week-long campaign to show their support for a drug-free environment. Now, therefore, I, Sean Gard, Mayor of the City of Washougal, Washington, do hereby proclaim October 23rd through October 31st as Red Ribbon Week and encourage citizens to join in making a visible statement of our commitment to a drug-free city. You're very welcome. Thank you for being here tonight. Do you want to say a few words about your efforts?
With our unit, we go out to different communities and different schools and specifically talk about how we do drug reduction. We lead it ourselves, which is a big part of being the leader in this community, is showing others that you can do it for yourself before you expect it. So we, on behalf of Lewis Clark, I'm going to thank you guys so much.
Thank you.
And we'll go out to our unit to be able to receive the proclamation.
Thank you.
May I ask what grade you guys are in?
I am currently a senior at Washougal High School.
Thank you.
Great. What about you?
McLaughlin Middle School at Vancouver, Washington.
Great. I think I bought a Christmas bow from you once. Did you go door to door selling those at one time when you were much littler? No recollection? So maybe it wasn't you.
Reach across America, yes. We do
Yes.
door to door, and we are right back involved with that currently right now as well.
I haven't had anybody at my door since that one time.
I'll see you before we leave.
Uh-oh.
I have a form
I
for
just,
you.
I just committed myself. Thank you very much.
Paul?
I just wanted to mention that there is a prevention coalition in the city of Washougal. And anyone who wants to work on things like Red Ribbon Week and some of the other prevention activities that unite, the Washougal Community Coalition has an open meeting the fourth Thursday at 4:30 over at the Social Services Building across the street on the second floor. Our staff member who makes everything happen is Margaret McCarthy. And anyone who is interested in more information can either talk to me or Councilmember Freeman has also been active, and Councilmember McDaniel, and Councilmember Lindsay has been to several meetings also. So if you want more information on that, please see one of us. Thank you.
Thank you. We're at that point in the agenda, the first opportunity in the agenda for any members of the public that would like to address council. Yes, ma'am. Good evening.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. I am Stephanie Chamberlain. I reside in very rural Washougal at 35519 Northeast 30th Street. I'm very proud that you're putting forth a resolution putting our city position against the coal and oil export terminals. That would never be good for our community. In fact, the only people that ever goes to port hearings or any of these things that think it's a good thing is Tesoro Savage businessmen. You guys recently got a raise. I think it's excellent. I feel like you're my tax dollars at work.
Wrong city.
No, that was Kim.
We didn't, Camus did.
Oh, yeah, I thought you guys did. Well,
Yeah.
you should, because I'm feeling like your efforts are extraordinary, and I'm proud to have you as my tax dollars at work. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Stephanie. Anyone else that would like to comment to council? Not your only opportunity. There is another spot at the end of the agenda as well. Okay. With that, we will move on to the consent agenda. Council, this evening, your consent agenda has 10 different items on it. Your workshop minutes of September 8th, 2014, your council minutes of September 8th, 2014, your workshop minutes of September 22nd, your council minutes of September 22nd, regular accounts payable claims totaling $762,191.38, payroll claims totaling $446,806.48. Agenda Bill 70-14, setting 2 public hearings to apply for the Community Development Block Grant funds for a kitchen remodel at the community center and ADA improvements at Steamboat Landing Observation Deck. Agenda Bill 71-14, an authorization for the mayor to sign a professional services agreement from Brown and Caldwell, Inc. for construction period service of the wastewater treatment improvement project. Agenda Bill 72-14, authorizing the staff to proceed with an access easement for sewer lift station number 2. And Agenda Bill 73-14, an authorization for the mayor to sign an interagency agreement from the Department of Enterprise Services regarding the energy utility conservation management and monitoring services. Council.
Mr. Mayor, I ask unanimous consent that we approve the consent agenda as read.
Hearing no objections, so ordered. Brings us to new business, Agenda Bill 74-14, Utility Assistance Program Approval. David?
Thank you, Mayor. Council, before you is the utility assistance payments for this cycle. As you know, you adopted a resolution that established the Emergency Utility Assistance Program. Your Finance Committee reviewed the applications along with the staff and determined that the applicants for support were eligible and that the support was appropriate. And the recommended action is to authorize the transfer of funds from the Utility Assistance Program Fund to the customer utility accounts as approved by the Finance Committee. This particular expenditure is $412.11, and the remaining balance would be, as shown on the agenda bill, $88,831.76.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we authorize the transfer of funds from the Utility Assistance Program Fund to the customer's utility account as approved by the Finance Committee.
Second.
I've got a motion and a second to authorize the transfer of funds from the Utility Assistance Program Fund to the customer's utility account as approved by the Finance Committee. Any council discussion? David?
Question. I see in the staff materials, the materials prepared by the staff, the agenda bill, that the intent of this program was to become self-sustaining based on donations from the public. Is that still our intent?
I think we would ultimately like to see community member donations to the program that would be adequate to support the demand for the support. I think that would be ideal.
I'd like to see sunshine 365 days a year, too. But that's not my goal here because it's not realistic. So the question remains, is that our goal? Is that still our goal? And if so, when?
I think it's our general goal. It's beyond our control in terms of what people will donate. So I can't tell you when we would achieve that.
Okay. I remind my colleagues that part of the sales pitch that we got on this was that it would become self-sustaining based on donations. It has not done that. So we're using public monies to pay people's utility bills. And while I believe that charity begins at home, I don't believe it's appropriate to use public monies for that purpose. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
You bet. Joyce?
As I understand it, the monies that are in the fund for the utility assistance program are from late fees paid by utility customers. This is not taxable money. This is not money that came from taxes.
We identified what the approximate amount of late fees we receive is for an annual period for utility bills, and then we set aside that amount to be the seed money for this fund. It's not from our general fund, it's not from general fund reserves or general taxes, but it was roughly equivalent to 1 year's worth of late fees on bills.
Thank you.
Dave?
Would you refresh my memory, please? Wasn't there a $90,000+ transfer from reserves to set this program up?
No.
No, it was transferred. It was transferred from the cash balance in the utility operating fund. So it was cash on hand in the utility operating fund, but the amount that was transferred was identified as equivalent to 1 year's worth of late fees.
We got a lot of late fees.
You do.
Sounds like a major source of income.
Roughly $90-ish thousand at that point.
Thank you.
Any other council discussion?
Sir,
Connie Jo?
I've had to miss the last couple of weeks of the Finance Committee meeting, and we've been discussing this in that meeting. Has there been any conclusion on next step over the last 2 weeks? Has it come up?
The Finance Committee really can't make conclusions of that sort.
Well,
Something that the council as a whole has to do.
Didn't we discuss it when you were there? And it's a budget issue.
There was an ad hoc budget committee meeting.
That's-
There was a
I'm sorry, I called it a Finance Committee meeting. It's the ad hoc. Stand corrected.
Yeah,
Okay.
there was a conversation. There were some questions that I answered for those that were in attendance, but there was, that was the extent of it.
Well, then I think it's just still in a conversation stage. Just kind of addressing your questions. We need to continue this conversation at those ad hoc meetings.
Excellent idea.
Okay.
Any other questions or comments in regards to Agenda Bill 7414? Okay, I've got a motion and a second to authorize the transfer of the funds from the Utility Assistance Program Fund to the customer utility accounts as approved by the Finance Committee. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Motion carries. And that brings us to budget discussion items, Public Works budget highlights. Trevor?
Thank you, Mayor, Council.
Okay, this evening we'll be going through the proposed Public Works budget. That will include both the operating funds as well as the capital fund with highlights for each one of those. And then towards the end of the presentation, we'll also have a slide in regards to unmet needs as well. So again, operating highlights, we'll go through engineering, parks, facilities, the street fund, cemetery, and the enterprise funds, the utilities, water, sewer, and stormwater. And the capital highlights, specifically for park impact fees, PIF, as we reference it as, facilities capital, transportation, the water and sewer, and stormwater, and again, some unmet needs towards the end of the presentation. So please note, in regards to the proposed 2015 budget, what was ratified and adopted by council for 2014 is in parentheses. Looking at the total general fund engineering, the other operating line items. So you see a little bit of a reduction there in regards to the overall. And for parks, similar. A little bit of a reduction in regards to the overall budget for parks, and specifically in the operation and maintenance fund. This does not take into consideration the capital or park impact fees. And a couple of projects that have been identified in regards to operations and maintenance. Upper Hathaway and Steamboat. I'll discuss those a little bit further later on in the presentation. And capital purchases, please note the $20,000 that was approved by council for the pickleball court retrofits, which is not in the 2015 proposed budget. Facilities, reduction overall. Hathaway Park repairs, HVAC replacement at the social service building across the street, and the deck replacement at Steamboat Landing Observatory. So the Hathaway Park repairs, just real briefly, are some lighting and utility improvements as far as extending water to the east gazebo, as well as some screening enhancements along the pickleball courts. The HVAC at the social service center is close to depreciated out, so we'll be moving forward with that. And again, that's across the street at social service, not here on campus at the community center. And the decking down at the Steamboat Landing is due for repair, replacement. So in looking at the street fund, see a little bit of an uptick in the overall budget. Operation and maintenance is somewhat flat. Street lights via contract with Clark Public Utilities. Maintaining existing level of service within the streets in regards to all of the crack sealing, painting, sign replacement, shoulder work, everything that staff completes on a recurring basis. And to note, in 2014, 150,000, yes?
I have a quick question.
Yeah.
Can you go back to the other slide? Yeah, but the streetlights, 130,000. We need 130,000 every year for the streetlight?
Yes,
That's the replacing the bulbs and such, or?
Yes, and pole replacement as well, in working with Clark Public Utilities.
They don't last very long then.
The newer bulbs do. The older bulbs are the high-pressure sodium. They replace the newer ones, I believe, with LEDs, where they're able to retrofit those. It depends on what type of apparatus they're retrofitting the bulb in, whether it's a Cobra head, which is what you'd see along E Street, or an acorn style, which is like a black base and an acorn style that you'd see in a newer subdivision or in the newer parts of town. We did look at this specific contract 2 years ago in regards to competitive bid, and Clark Public Utilities was much cheaper than utilizing a private contractor. So that is a full service agreement. It's basically a pass-through notification to us, and it's sent to CPU's main board for replacement if there's a down pole or a bulb that's out.
Okay, so the
Citywide.
$130,000 is just a standard contract amount that we budget every year for CPU to do the work
That's for all of the lighting infrastructure within city limits of Washougal.
You know if that's, I mean, Do we get details on, as the bills roll in, or no?
Details on the bills?
Yeah, I mean, are we really spending $130,000 a year on streetlights?
So we don't have specific invoices for power consumption within the grid. So they're not metered specifically, but they do it on basically a mathematical equation to be able to break out how many lights we have in aggregate throughout the city, and then a per light charge, which is very similar to what they do with other jurisdictions, municipalities in Southwest Washington. But I can provide additional information on that if you'd like.
Okay.
Excuse me.
We do get invoices, though, for the downed light poles and that work that they do.
Yes.
Yes.
Excuse me, does this include the electricity?
Yes.
Is it, okay.
Paul?
I just wanted to observe that in my neighborhood, about a third of the lights have been replaced with the LEDs. And boy, what a difference it makes in terms of visibility, and things look right, which helps when you're driving at night. Those sodium vapor lights give such weird color contrast to things that some things just blend into the background, especially kids on bicycles without lights. And so the LED lights have been very, I'm thrilled to have them in my neighborhood.
Great, that's wonderful. I'm hoping that with all of the light replacement that we're doing, that we'll maybe save a few dollars here and there. It's supposed to be more energy efficient. But if we don't know exactly how much we're actually paying or charging as far as electricity is concerned, we may never really realize. Just keep budgeting $130,000 every year. So.
And I can provide order of magnitude as far as how many lights we have, what type of lights those are, and then what would be the per light charge on an annual basis.
Great.
So,
thank you.
okay. So again, just mentioning real briefly, 2014, $150,000 from REIT, real estate excise tax, towards our pavement management program. And in 2015, $150,000 program from REIT again, and $210,000 from the general fund transfer for pavement management, which is separate from the street fund. Cemetery is also somewhat flat for 2015. You will see a capital project for your consideration in the proposed budget, and that is reestablishing planter benches within the pioneer portion of the cemetery, or the upright monument portion of the cemetery. They were dilapidated and falling apart and becoming a liability, according to our cemetery manager. So it's been requested and approved, recommended by the cemetery board to move forward with this project to be able to be sponsored over the next several years with donations to be able to install plaques in memory of loved ones. Water sewer budget, operation budget for 2015. One specific note here is the transfer, what we had discussed in great detail with Mr. Lewis in regards to $1 million transfer to support the wastewater treatment plant expansion that'll be going to construction shortly. That makes the biggest difference in the 2014 and 2015.
Question?
Yeah.
You've got $1.5 million up there for salaries and benefits. How many people does that cover?
We have 10 FTEs within water sewer, and then there's an allocation for myself and other support staff as far as the city engineer and the assistant public works director, the administrative assistant and executive assistant. So
Okay, so that includes chargeback for the overhead positions, administrative overhead.
Yes.
Thank you.
Just to clarify that, it doesn't include all of the administrative overhead, but it includes direct portions of some salaries, but it doesn't count IT or finance. That's indirect charges.
Understand.
Okay.
Few highlights in regards to the Water and Sewer Department, ongoing operation and maintenance. We have some projects to abandon a portion of our upper well field, best management practices around asset management and GIS capabilities, and maintaining infrastructure repair and replacement in regards to our wellheads, which are mission critical, obviously, for serving potable water. Paul?
Upper Wellfield abandonment, that's over at Hathaway?
Upper Hathaway, just east of what is now the pickleball courts.
Does that leave us with no source other than the one over in the west part of the city?
No, that leaves us with one wellhead that's fully operational. We are proposing to abandon 2 other wellheads that have been dormant for several years. And then what we have programmed in our capital program is to eventually expand capacity in our east wellfield or upper wellfield.
And then I'm curious, where are reservoirs 1A and B?
1A and B is on 32nd Street. So as you travel north out of town and you make it north of the cemetery and R Street, they're off to the right-hand side before you get to W.
Great, thank you, appreciate it.
Stormwater budget, overall, small reduction. No capital purchases this year proposed. Debt payments. Few highlights for the Stormwater Department, continuing our interlocal agreement with Clark County to be able to utilize Watley Pit, which is where we're bring our street sweepings and backed material to be able to treat that in accordance with our MPDS permit with the Department of Ecology. Continue our mapping updates in regards to infrastructure for dry wells and mainline storm line and catch basins. Continued service levels in regards to street sweeping and catch basin cleaning, and maintenance and repair of right at 33 stormwater facilities citywide, as well as continued maintenance of the downtown and East Street corridor. Yeah.
Is there a calendar on our website that tells about the street sweeping days?
I don't think we have a calendar on the website right now. We do have it programmed internally, but that is something we could post as far as the frequency of it, if you receive those questions.
And when, certain day of the month or something, they just tend to show up, and I love street sweepers. I don't like seeing that little gray line around the cars that were parked on the street, so if we knew better, if we were better informed in advance, I think people might clear their cars off.
Yeah, we try to operate with some flexibility since we have one sweeper as far as breakdown, repair, and replacement of that specific piece of equipment. So obviously try to stick to that schedule as best as possible, but try to be flexible and either utilize interlocal agreements with CAMUS or other jurisdictions to be able to get that sweeping done. But for the most part, we're able to stick to that schedule.
Okay, thanks, Trevor.
Especially the day after the 4th of July. Facilities capital highlights, Steamboat Landing ADA improvements, and you'll see a 3-prong approach as far as the funding for this proposed project. In aggregate, a $300,000 improvement, $70,000 from facilities capital, $68,000 from park impact fees, PIF fees, and a $162,000 ask of the Community Development Block Grant Program with Clark County. Developing a facilities master plan or comprehensive plan. Over the last 3 years, we've made multiple improvements, specifically here at City Hall with some roof repairs and facade ADA improvements. We'd like to continue those efforts above and beyond the campus to be able to look at all of our facilities and approach it in a strategic manner as far as repair and replacement of assets. And the community center improvements I'd mentioned earlier within our workshop session, going through some more detailed scenarios on what we anticipate in regards to the community center, pending being eligible for specific funds and being successful in landing those specific funds. So the first scenario is the ideal scenario, being able to secure the $600,000 in aggregate to be able to make the improvements at the community center. That would include or be a portion of $50,000 of support from Meals on Wheels in working with staff over there, as well as a $300,000 appropriation from the state, $162,000 ask of the Community Development Block Grant. Again, a separate program. That's the social service side of CDBG. Steamboat Landing is on the infrastructure side. And a $88,000 local match out of our facilities capital fund. So we would be able to complete not only the roof, a full membrane re-roof of that facility, be able to retrofit the kitchen, replace the HVAC, and do the facade repairs. So scenario 2, no state appropriation, the $300,000 ask. We would be able to complete the kitchen and HVAC. So not replacing the roof and no facade repairs. Scenario 3, no community development block grant or Meals on Wheels, but we would have $388,000 in support. We'd be able to complete the kitchen retrofit, HVAC, and do spot repairs on the roof, not a complete reconstruct.
Michelle, did you have a question?
Yeah, is the roof currently leaking, or how old is it?
Yes, the roof is leaking. There's been repairs over the last several years. Facility was built in the early 80s, and so we've made repairs since then, some more significant than others. But we do have leaking and air quality concerns that have been brought forward to us as well from a few of the occupants.
So when roof is stated, is it a completely new roof that would be put on then, as opposed to patching?
That's right, a full membrane roof that would go over the top.
Oh, I guess you already said that, sorry.
Are we worried about rot at this point?
So in working with the architect, there is contingency built in if we do run into those unforeseens, and working that into the bid specs as far as doing a pre-analysis on that to see if we're going to have significant dry rot or structural issues. So there is a large contingency built in.
Yeah, I was thinking more in terms of that if it's leaking, it's about to get, it gets progressively more expensive very rapidly as you lose structure to rot. So, yeah, patching works for a little while, but eventually what you're doing is digging a deeper hole. As I'm sure you know, I'm not.
Scenario 4, $50,000 of support from Meals on Wheels and the local match. We're able to complete the kitchen improvements. And scenario 5 is somewhat the worst case scenario. No dollars are landed from partners or from programs, and we end up with the $88,000 match. If that's the case, we need to become a little bit more savvy in regards to completing the kitchen improvements, not only in accordance with Department of Health, what's been identified, but potentially leveraging donations or labor individuals willing to help out and pitch in to be able to make those improvements to the kitchen.
Joyce?
Does Meals on Wheels pay rent for the building?
No.
Supply the building?
No, if they do, it might be a dollar arrangement like it is for Children's Home Society across the street at the social service. I'm not certain. I'd have to pull the contract or the agreement.
Does the city pay the utility bills also then?
Mm-hmm. Yes. So moving on in regards to the park impact fees for capital highlights. Schmid property acquisition, anticipated to make full transaction in 2015. You will see at the next workshop a draft interlocal agreement from Clark County from their Conservation Futures program to try to recoup and get reimbursed up to half of the purchase price in the neighborhood of $300,000. So that will be back before you on October 27th. Heartwood Park, the next phase of Heartwood Park, we've made some playground structure, farm equipment improvements up there over the last 2 years. This is the next phase of that specific improvement at Heartwood Park at 49th and Doc Eldridge Drive, a northeastern portion of town, for those not familiar with Heartwood Park. Beaver Park completion, that's downtown, just west of the police department along SR 14. This would complete the project as it shows in the slide. And again, Steamboat Landing, so this is the switching of the numbers since it is a three-prong approach to be able to fund the project. $68,000 from park impact fees, $70,000 from facilities capital, and $162,000 ask of the block grant. And also additional development acquisitions anticipated in the neighborhood of $500,000. And we'll talk about some of those potential acquisitions or opportunities later in unmet needs towards the end of the presentation. Transportation capital, 32nd and Evergreen intersection improvements. Overall project cost right at $1.4 million. Currently secured regional federal funds at $722,000. Transportation Improvement Board funding request of $500,000 to support the project. TIB was a significant contributor to the E Street Road Diet when it was completed several years ago. And traffic impact fees that we've collected here at a local level supporting the project at $151,000. Paul?
Are those regional federal funds and the TIB funds secured, or are we just applying for them?
Regional federal funds have been secured. The Transportation Improvement Board, TIB, is pending. We've submitted for consideration.
Do we have any idea how we scored?
We don't yet. I know Administrator Scott had a short tour with the Executive Director of TIB, Mr. Gorcester, several weeks ago and got a general sense of TIB's funding outlook, if you will.
You may have met Steve before, the TIB exec. He was here with a staff member, and they looked at Camas projects and Washougal projects. They very much saw the need, but they couldn't make any promises or guarantees. But we feel pretty confident with our request to the TIB. If we're not successful with the TIB, we believe that we can accomplish the project by leveraging traffic impact fee dollars. The construction sequencing still goes out a couple of years. It won't be done completely in 2015. It's not even fully designed yet. It's close, but not fully designed. So it's 75% design. Starts in about a year.
Yeah, we're construction in late 15.
And then into 16 and such. So that obviously that's not desirable because we would like to use our traffic impact fee money as much as possible as a local match.
Right.
And which is why you see it pledged here. It's the match for that 722 and the 500. We should know soon though about the TIB funding, and we'll give you an update once we find out.
Great, thank you.
Water and sewer capital overview. Wastewater treatment plant expansion, thank you. Zone 6, siting a reservoir in the west portion of town in accordance with our water comprehensive plan. General sewer plan update. The last time we updated our general sewer plan was 2006. Typically it's every 5 to 6 years, so we have a little bit of work to do there in regards to our GSP. Seismic analysis on Reservoir 1A and B.
Dave?
Where again is Zone 6?
Zone 6 is what would be referenced as Woodburn Hill.
Okay,
In close proximity to Lookout Ridge and Granite Highlands.
got it, thanks.
Seismic analysis on Reservoir 1A and B. Those are the reservoirs Councilmember Greenlee just asked for a location of. Those are on 32nd Street, the lower portion of town. Everything in the industrial park and downtown Washougal is served by those two reservoirs, so critical pieces of infrastructure. So we're proposing a seismic analysis on those reservoirs. And automated metering infrastructure. We've had a few touches on this in regards to automated improvements, fixed network to be able to free up water operators for maintenance and operation, and to improve ease of use for utility billing as well, in partnership with McKinstry and Department of Commerce Enterprise Services. Stormwater capital. Decant facility, again, this is part of the wastewater treatment plant. Contractor will be mobilizing on site fairly soon. W Street drainage improvements. This takes into consideration not only W Street, but downstream culverts and the whole basin for the east side of town down into Camping Creek and Gibbons. The fueling facility, which we were successful in receiving design dollars from Department of Ecology, and anticipate being supported by them for the construction phase as well. That would be a $400,000 project, $300,000 of that offset if successful in a grant from Ecology. Then we have some stormwater retrofits, some catch basin and drainage issues in the intersections or areas of 15th and R Street and North O Street. We talked about earlier unmet needs. Administrator Scott, going to give an overview.
Thank you, Trevor. Council, we've had discussions over the last several months, sometimes at the ad hoc committee, sometimes here in work session, or sometimes informally. There's been an identification of some unmet needs in the community, and in a moment here I'll walk through that. But before I do on this, I wanted to clarify that this doesn't include our transportation capital facilities plan. We have a significant transportation capital facilities plan. It's millions of dollars, and we're not talking about that plan here and funding for those. We're legislatively seeking those. On that first bullet, you'll note fund from $52,000 available for 2015. I have an update for you from our last budget presentation. During our last budget presentation, we had our best estimate at what we thought our overall general fund revenues and expenditures would be. We had not gotten final information on a significant expenditure, and that is our interlocal projected expenses for our interlocal with Camas for fire. That came in a little better than what we were anticipating, and so I'm pleased to report that that made available about $122,000. The last time that we spoke about the budget, we talked about the need to look at the use of reserves for $75,000, 25 of which was set aside just in case for Cressa radio replacement in 2015, a down payment. And then the other was to establish a dangerous building abatement fund, which is a best practice. And we all shared concern that we would be looking to our reserves to do that. I'm pleased to report that because of that updated estimate, we are able to accomplish both of those items within the operating budget for 2015. We have reduced the abatement fund to 45. We felt that that was an appropriate number as opposed to the 50, and still adequate for our community. And so after doing that, obviously those are two real priorities for us. We need to get that dangerous building abatement fund established because we have potentially some abatements coming up. And we need to buy our radios, so we may need that money in 2015, as we mentioned. So with that said, there are a number of unmet needs that the team has either kind of sat on the last couple of budget cycles because we simply didn't have the resources operationally to fund them, and we had direction from the council to not propose the use of reserves, and so we did not bring these projects forward. So what we have done is categorized into 4 categories here, and it's the bold print. And the first is not using reserves, but is the remaining operational dollars that we have available for 2015. Our proposal is that we take care of 2 projects. One is at Lower Hathaway. The road needs to be restabilized there. We've kind of band-aided that. That's a serious issue. We've punted that long enough. We're able to do that operationally now, as opposed to suggesting the use of reserves, so we're glad about that. The other is a little bit of a newer project, but down at the police station it's getting a little bit tight in parking, a little bit of modifications that can happen with the storm swales to get a little bit more hard surface there, estimated at $12,000. If we were to do those 2 projects, as we're proposing, then we would have our estimated precisely balanced 0 operating budget for our general fund. However, there would continue to be unmet needs in this community. One of them is a transportation maintenance item. It's Lookout Ridge Drive right at Crown. I could turn it over to Trevor here, but I'll try to summarize and correct me, Trevor, if necessary. If you've ever driven on that, it's in pretty bad shape, and Trevor and the team don't know if we'll make it through another season there, and the longer we delay, the more expensive it will become. And this is a unfortunate situation because it's not a very old street. Estimate is $210,000. The second project in this category, and this is the category where we would be recommending that for these one-time expenses we dip into reserves. The council has, in a number of different settings, talked about a desire to have a community center or a rec center or a swimming pool or all these different types of amenities that we could have, and certainly that is a need in the community. We are proposing that, if we want to be serious about that and advancing that we ought to go after it. And the first step in doing that is a feasibility study, kind of what is it that we would do, how big would it be, how much would it cost, and how would we pay for it. Similar exercise to what the library district is going through right now. And I don't know if we would need to be as extensive in that. And this is our best estimate about what it might cost to get some help for us to do that so that we could develop a capital campaign, if you would, along the lines of trying to do something around a community center or a rec center. So for your consideration, just trying to be responsive to the council who has brought this forward. If you want us to get after that, this would be a way that we could do that. And we would use reserves for that initial study. The next category is just to get a placeholder in all of our thinking. As you've read, the port is hopefully going to be successful in all of their asks for funding down at the waterfront redevelopment. They're number 1 on one of the lists for funding, and they're going to be building a waterfront park and a trail, and then it falls on us to pick up where they leave off and get it tied over close to our pedestrian tunnel. It's a difficult project. It's in the shorelines, extensive permitting requirements and construction challenges. The $2 million that you see there is a very, very preliminary and we believe probably conservative estimate from our own city engineer. It's not an engineer's estimate that's been based on surveys and all of that. We would have to expend some funds in order to get a precise engineer's estimate for it. It's just to get an order of magnitude, and that is to say it's a significant project. But I think the community or the city, in partnership with the port, needs to step up and pursue grant dollars and try to be able to deliver the rest of that trail so that we get connectivity of our downtown to the waterfront redevelopment, which I know is important to the council, it's important to our downtown, and it's important to the port and the developer as well. So it's more of a placeholder. One thought would be, as you recall on the park impact fee slide, there'll be about $500,000 still available in the Park Impact Fee Fund after doing all of the projects that Trevor walked through, and assuming we get the $300,000 from the county, and we're very confident on that. One possibility would be to use some of that $500,000 to get a concept so that we could take that concept to funders and try to get grants. We don't know exactly what it would cost for us to do that. We would, of course, have to bring a professional services agreement to you, but that's definitely going to become an unmet need in our community. And then the last item here is the notion of a downtown park or a green space. This has been talked about over several years about the need to do that. There is nothing specific in mind per se. It's a relatively small area, so you can imagine what some of the possibilities might be. Certainly, park impact fee funds could be used if there was an opportunity that made sense for us to do that. So this is a summary of the unmet needs that either the council has made a priority in communications with the staff, or that the staff team has brought forward, and our program for 2015 and beyond for moving forward. And I think the one that I would anticipate might engender the most conversation by the council would be the second one there on funding from unrestricted reserves. It's been our direction to not make such proposals the last several years, but we have these unmet needs, and so for your consideration are these unmet needs and the use of unrestricted reserves to do that. The others would be out of PIF, or like the first one there, we can do it operationally. And that concludes the overall Public Works budget. It's an extensive budget. I wanted to thank Trevor and his team for a lot of work putting together their capital program especially.
Paul?
If we had transportation impact fees or REIT money available, would the Lookout Ridge reconstruct qualify for the use of those funds?
Definitely, we could use REIT. We use REIT for our pavement management program. I don't believe it qualifies as an arterial. We'd have to look at our arterial. It has to be an arterial and to be TIF eligible. And
right. Yeah, it might be. We'd have to research that. A portion of it is a full reconstruct because of the base material, the lack of base material for access for that whole Woodburn Hill that's developed to the west, especially Lookout Ridge Phase 1 and 2. All of the construction vehicles, concrete trucks, asphalt, truss trucks, all that accessed the subdivisions off of Crown and Lookout Ridge, so it's taken a pretty good pounding.
Sounds like a maintenance issue, really. You can't use TIF for maintenance.
No, we can research to be certain. But,
if you go down to base material, I think it's a capital project.
Okay. I think a reconstruct, we'll have to get those details and
But and then the other question that you bring up for me then is, who gets to designate it as an arterial?
The arterial classification really makes its way through the city engineer in working with regional transportation as far as our grid, our transportation grid, because we've only got 2 major arterials in town, which is East Street and 32nd Street.
There are other projects that are TIF eligible. The statute provides some confinement to what we do, but I think we have some discretion. Now,
And I thought there were several different kinds of arterials.
There is.
yes. In fact, at our next workshop, I believe, I don't have the council planner in front of us, but I believe on the 27th, we are workshopping our capital facility, our transportation capital facilities plan, and we will be showing you the grid, the map, and we'll show you the arterials, and we'll definitely be able to answer that question for you.
I would just observe from what went on at RTC last Tuesday that if we wanted to involve the RTC in this project, that I think there's a JMAC meeting coming up, a joint transportation, that it would be good to raise it there.
Right.
Other questions for Dave or Trevor, either one? Okay. Thank you, Trevor.
Thank you.
Dave, are you taking the training and professional services?
Yes. Thank you, Mayor. Council, as you know, as part of our 2015 budget preparation process, we asked the staff to do what we call a zero-based process to our training and professional services line items, and I should say it's the professional services that have to do with our operations and maintenance, our regular operations, not necessarily on the capital projects, because the capital projects are the capital projects. So that was done. Excuse me just a minute, I got to make this cord longer, it keeps pulling out. There we go. Come back. Okay. So the team did that, and as we mentioned, we would come back and talk to you about what we found. So this portion of the conversation, we'll just review the purpose of that again, and we'll get into the training, and then we'll get into the professional services. The reason that we went through this process in asking departments to review their training and professional services line items was to get a detailed look at what that is. We typically have that, but an even more detailed look for our purposes as we're preparing the budget. We didn't assign a reduction target, but we were wondering what this detailed review might accomplish for us. So that was our purpose, as kind of a general purpose. Wanted to give a little bit of context so that we could have a feel for where we're at as an organization and how we spend for training, and looked around for sort of some benchmarking type information and found some pretty useful information from a professional association, the American Society for Training and Development. And what they report is that, and this is for organizations of all kind, public, private, not-for-profit, that training costs in organizations as described as a percent of salary, so not as a percent of your overall budget, but as a percent of salary, that they find typically are in the range of 1% to 3% of your salary expenditures. Obviously, the higher that percentage, the more you're spending on training in your organization. And in 2011, for organizations smaller than 500, they did not break it down any further than that. And this is just context. the average per employee expenditure, and that's simply taking the total amount and dividing it by the number of employees in the organization. It doesn't mean that you spend exactly the same amount on every employee. It's an average. For organizations 500 and less, that number in 2011 was about $1,600 annually. And so just to kind of put us in context, in our current budget, our training is about 1.5% of our salary costs, and overall the average per employee expenditure is just under $1,000. That's just context, just to give us a feel for kind of how we stack up. So here is basically the results of this process. Jennifer put this together. This slide shows 2014 versus 2015, and the next slide shows departments. This one takes a broader breakdown. It shows our general fund, our street fund, our water sewer fund, and our stormwater fund, and gives you the details there, shows you that 1.53% in 2014, and the amount. You can see that the highest per employee average was in stormwater. There's been a lot of new regulations in stormwater, and so the training needs been more pronounced in that area. And then you can see the others there. And then in 2015, you can see that the training budget, as a result of this exercise, is within $500 of the prior year's training budget. And it remains at about 1.53%, and the per capita amount is a little bit lower. Instead of 986, it's 980. And my commentary on that is, back in 2010, now this was before I came to the city, but when I came to the city in the late spring of 2010, the city had already adopted some amendments to the budget and had reduced expenditures in the general fund particularly fairly significantly in order to eliminate the use of reserves that had been approved in late 2009 in order to get a budget passed at that time, everything that was going on, get a budget passed and keep things moving in 2010. Those of you that were on council will remember Mr. Lewis came in. It may have been when you met Mr. Lewis. He came in and worked with our employee groups and our department heads and managers and the council and helped a budget reduction exercise. During that time, and then again in 2011, which was the first budget that I worked on, we made some reductions in our training budget. And so what this revealed to me in my general oversight of this area is that the departments have pared back their training kind of already and went through that exercise in 2010 and 2011. And that results in the fact that what they bring forward is basically a similar portfolio to what we've seen and what we are doing this year. Now the department detail, and this is in your packet, so when you look at it on your own iPads, you can see it better than up on the screen here, and I apologize for that. Wanted to try to give you a view so you could see the comparison, understanding that it would be smaller. It just gives you the detail. It totals it all up, and all the totals are the same, but you can get a feel for the fact that not all of the training needs in the organization are the same. Some of the training needs in some of our departments are a little more extensive than they are in some of the others, and so you'll see higher or lower per employee spending amounts. I think the best comparison there is the percentages or the training dollars per employee. So there's fine-grained detail here for the departments, not listed in any specific order per se. That's what we found on travel and training. In professional services, we found something similar, that we have pared our professional services for operations and maintenance down to those things that are necessary for us to operate. As you know, as a small organization, we don't have the expertise in-house to do a number of the different things that are required of us or that we want to do, and we use professional services to accomplish those things. For example, we have a professional services agreement for Don and Scott to provide legal services for us. We have a professional services agreement for our economic development. We have professional services agreements for some of the higher level specialized civil engineering work, like the one that you approved this evening for construction management at our sewer plant. So this slide breaks it down 2014 over 2015. You can see that our budget, and again, this is for the O&M, is a little bit lower, but basically the same year over year. You can see where it went down a little bit and where it went up a little bit. And then the next slide, similar view to what you saw in the training. It shows that again by department, and it compares 2014 to 2015. And you will see some of it basically status quo. In some cases, it's come down because the O&M needs year over year changed, and in some cases, it went up because the O&M needs changed year over year. So that is the high-level results and analysis of the effort. I thank the team for doing that. It wasn't an incremental budgeting process this year in these line items. The conclusion that I have to report is that there was a little bit of savings in professional services, and I think that was not necessarily attributed to this exercise, but attributed to just the changing dynamic of our needs year over year for the projects. And that's the report.
Sure.
Thanks. Why the significant decrease in parks and facilities?
On the professional services?
Yeah.
I believe that was it's down about 25,000. That was the root balls. Yeah, that was the there was at the levy last year we had a one-time expense to remove the root balls out of the levy in order to keep the levy certification. So that was kind of a one-time thing, and that's a great example, Counselor, of why you might see some fluctuation in operations and maintenance professional services year over year. You might have a one-time thing like that would come up.
Paul?
A few years ago, we hired a city engineer, and before that, we were having all of that work done through a professional services agreement. My memory is that we were spending about $150,000 a year to do the work that Rob Charles is now doing for two-thirds of that.
I don't remember the precise numbers, Trevor. I don't know if you do. We have an engineering tech, which was a recast of the inspector, so it wasn't a new expense.
Right.
But yes, we are having Rob in-house saved us money in that general engineering. Yes, and it continues to.
In fact, it was particularly striking that the engineering consulting firm who had the contract to do all of that consulting said to the city, you know, it's about time you hired your own engineer. It'd be a lot cheaper.
That's accurate. Yep.
And so I just wanted to remind people of that we do keep a pretty sharp pencil on all of this.
Other questions for David on training and travel? Okay. We're now at that second opportunity in the agenda for any members of the public that would like to address council. Any comments? Okay. Under Mayor's report, I've got 4 items. One, just a reminder, next Monday, we have a joint meeting at 4:30 in the afternoon at Lacamas Lodge out at Lacamas Lake with the City of Camas and the Port in regards to economic development. So 4:30 next Monday. That note is also on your calendar at the bottom of the agenda this evening.
Just a quick note, I may be only moments late,
No worries.
so.
The following day, on the 21st, there is by the Department of Ecology, there is a rail public meeting in regards mainly to oil trains in Lacey. I'll try and make sure that Rose has that information for anybody that may be interested in that. It's open to the public. They'll be taking testimony. And I believe that the governor's lead person from the Department of Ecology will be doing his updates at that point of where they're at and what they have collected so far from testimony. Quick recap on Oktoberfest. It was wonderful. Quite frankly, the one at Amnesia blew through every expectation that we had and then some. So for those of you that weren't there, you have another opportunity. The 25th of this month, there is Zombie Fest. Oktoberfest, Halloween, all combined down at Doomsday Brewing, also in Washougal. And then final item, council, in your workshop, you started a discussion in regards to an oil train resolution committee. Would you like to take any action in regards to that?
I don't know whether would like to. I will. But I would suggest a committee of myself, Councilmember Greenlee, and Councilmember Shoemaker.
Is that a motion?
That's a suggestion. If you want to call it a motion, I guess it is.
I'll second that suggestion.
Okay.
I do need it to be framed in the form of a motion.
I move that. I don't like to move it myself as an appointment, especially when I don't want. But
additional meetings.
Yes, additional meetings. But I would move to appoint Councilmember Shoemaker, Councilmember Greenlee, and myself to a committee to craft a resolution. We might have a majority and minority report on that resolution, but we'll come up with something.
Second.
Okay, I've got a motion and a second to establish a oil train resolution committee comprised of council members Greenlee, Shoemaker, and Boger. Any council discussion? Dave?
You're very gracious with your time.
Any other comments or discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. You have another committee. One abstain?
Abstain, sorry. I didn't
Not a
get
worry.
that out.
That's all that I've got. Councilmember Boger. Michelle?
No.
Paul?
RTC meeting last Tuesday. Nothing of great import other than things are percolating along, making plans for the next few years. There are two large plans. Regional Transportation Commission includes not only Clark County but also Skamania and Klickitat, and has representatives from Oregon Department of Transportation and from Metro, which is the metropolitan government for Portland. It's an organization that's created, that's required by the federal government to dispense highway funds. And so they do, or we do, two plans, a 6-year plan and a 20-year plan. And the 6-year plan is coming up pretty soon here. And the 20-year plan will, those changes won't be made until we have a little bit more certainty from the county on its Growth Management Act plan for the next several decades. But it was a good meeting. The other thing I wanted to mention is that I get to go to Yellowstone. I'm leaving this Friday, and I won't be back until a week from this Sunday. So I will miss the meeting in Camas. I won't be available to go to Lacey, and I also will miss the Zombie Fest. But I had planned that a long time, looked at the council schedule and said, there's the time I can go, and of course.
Also, go ahead, Paula.
Yeah, go ahead.
On that note, I will miss my first full council meeting next, I guess it's the 27th. I'm going to be in Florida, so if need be, I can call in for it, but it will be, 10 o'clock my time when I do, but I will.
You're quite the soldier.
Yeah.
That's all, thank you.
Joyce?
Nothing.
Jennifer?
There is a fundraiser this Saturday for our Humane Society, the West Columbia Gorge Humane Society, located right here in Washougal. And their fundraiser is Saturday at 5 p.m. at the Holiday Inn on Columbia Boulevard in Portland, and I understand there are still tickets available for that. So please come out if you can and support our local Humane Society. Thank you.
Dave?
Short of some sort of emergency, there will not be a public safety meeting this month. We had an unscheduled one last month to deal with issues that came up. The second thing I'd like to do tonight is I'd like to urge people to vote no on the county charter. And I'll give you 7 reasons.
Dave?
Yeah.
Scott, is that even something we can go into during session?
It's not something that's before the city council. I would.
Actually, I moved during the workshop that we have a resolution to that effect. I think that made it city business.
My concern is using council chambers to campaign.
I'm not campaigning.
If you're urging people to vote no, that's a campaign.
I have no part in this. I'm not part of the county.
If it's county business and the council's going to discuss and vote on a resolution, and you can discuss it, but I wouldn't recommend if it's going to be a proposition to encourage people how to vote. I think that would be campaigning.
Dave?
Can I make clear my disagreement with the charter without urging people not to vote for it?
I have, Scott and I can look briefly here. MRSC's website has the exceptions to the prohibition of using public facilities, and it kind of talks about this a little bit. We need 5-10 seconds just to look at this.
Okay.
I know other cities have passed resolutions, whether they're for or against. How did they go about that?
I don't know, and I asked City of Camas that as well, and I never did get an answer back on that. So,
A lot of cities are considering it. I suppose if Councilmember Shoemaker wanted to just make a motion that we oppose the charter, then he can speak to his motion.
So moved. I can take a hint, thank you.
So is that a motion, then are we moving forward with that, or are we going to wait? Because I'll make a second there if that's the case.
So I think the council can deliberate on a resolution or a motion to express support or opposition to a ballot measure, but there's some noticing provisions that we have to do, so we'll have to make sure we notice it properly. There's some other things in there specifically to talk about it, just kind of one-on-one, one-by-one here. You can't do it in the meeting. You can, but an elected official can make a statement at an open press conference, but not in the meeting individually.
Advocating one position or the other.
Right.
However, we can discuss the resolution, can we not?
Once we properly notice it. It has to be noticed in order to be exempt. There's a broad prohibition that says you cannot use public facilities either way. There are 3 exceptions. One of the exceptions is that a legislative body can deliberate a motion for or against, or a resolution for or against, but it must be noticed. The notice for the meeting must include the title and number of the ballot proposition, and members of the legislative body or members of the public must be allowed an approximately equal opportunity to express an opposing view. So we just have to make sure we provide adequate notice. So if we're going to schedule that, if the council votes to, the council can deliberate right now about whether or not to put it on the agenda, but not the merits of the proposition either way. You could talk about the merits of having it on your agenda, then we can notice it for the next meeting, or a special meeting if you wanted to have a special meeting.
Mr. Mayor, I will second the motion and move to lay it on the table.
Connie Jo already seconded it.
Hmm?
Connie Jo already.
Oh, Connie Jo already second? Well, I move to lay it on the table.
Is that appropriate before the discussion?
It can be done at any time.
Okay.
Second.
Actually, I think your motion doesn't even need a second, does it?
It does need a second, but it's not debatable.
Okay, I've got a motion and a second to lay the issue of a resolution on the table. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Motion carries.
I didn't vote for those who were paying attention.
I just didn't hear them in the no, so I count them as yeses. Dave?
I note that I've been muzzled.
Apologies. I would have done that to either side had it brought up because it's
Understand.
been a concern of mine.
I
Personally, I don't care either way. I just want to make sure that we don't.
No
do it ourselves.
criticism of you. I think you know how I feel about the Open Meetings Act and some of its provisions. I think this flows from that, and I think it's a way to muzzle people.
Sure is.
Thank you.
Any other items, Dave?
Nope.
Okay. Connie Jo?
Yes, a great event is coming up Friday morning at 7 a.m. to 9 a.m., and it's called the Clark County Mayor's Civic and Leaders Prayer Breakfast at the Hilton, Vancouver, Washington. Friday, this coming Friday. So I would like to invite all of you here and those of you watching by YouTube. This is a county-wide event, and the most fabulous part is the keynote speaker, Lieutenant General William Jerry Boykin. And if you know anything about Lieutenant General Boykin, he is an American hero. And we're going to have him right here in our backyard. So if you'd like to research it, you can easily go to Clark County Prayer Breakfast, and it pops right up, tell you all of his background and all of the distinguished things that he's done on behalf of our nation. So I will be there. I'd love to have you come have breakfast and prayer.
Anything else?
Sorry?
Anything else?
Nope.
Paul?
Without objection, I would like to move the vote on all of the stuff about our student representative to council to immediately following roll call so that she can participate in the meeting basically from its beginning.
We can do that. Thank you. Okay, with that, we have one other item this evening, which is an executive session in regards to property acquisition. Dave, I'm going to guess 10 minutes, maybe?
10 minutes should be sufficient.
With no action to follow.
No action to follow.
So with that, it basically is the end of the meeting. You're welcome to stay outside in the foyer just to see if we do something afterwards, but certainly no intention of taking any action other than adjournment of the meeting after the executive session is over. Yes, sir?
No, can we get a picture of all of you before we leave?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
We're happy to wait 10 more minutes, whatever's convenient for you all.
You better get it while you can.
Let's do it now.
10 minutes is no guarantee.
Let's do it now.
These kids need
Photo with the young Marines.
Joyce, where'd you pull the slide deck? Is it under miscellaneous or?
Both of you want to come up front center and we can stand here and look like we're photobombing you instead of just me looking like we are?